Hi, this is Andrew Groh with Missouri Society of CPAs. This is MOCPA Bar Talk, where we talk about the latest trends, news, and issues that matter to you the most. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrew Groh. Welcome to MOCPA Bar Talk. This is episode number 10. Hard to believe we're here and through 10 episodes this year. And I'd like to welcome two of my good friends here, Melvin Gatson with Ernst & Young. Melvin is business consulting associate, and Gary Parker with KPMG, a senior audit associate. Gentlemen, welcome. We're going to be talking about some great things today, but Melvin, maybe can you tell us a little bit more about who you are first, and then Gary, you share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show. It's an honor. I've always wanted to participate in the podcast, so looking forward to it. So my name is Melvin Gatson. I'm a CPA and a business consulting associate at EY, and that's just a kind of a long version way of saying I'm an auditor and specialize in technology risk. I'm from Kansas City, Kansas, went to Park University, and I've been working in accounting for about 7.5 years or so. And I've got some prior industry experience in addition to my public accounting experience. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Melvin. Gary, why don't you share a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, can. So hello, everyone, first. As he mentioned, my name is Gary Parker. I grew up in the Kansas City area. I went to Lincoln Prep, middle school, Blue Springs South High School. From there, went to Truman State University, go Bulldogs, if we have anyone listening. And then outside of that, went to KPMG, started at KPMG after college. And that brings me up to today, essentially.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I know we've known each other maybe a little briefly over the last maybe 6-9 months or so, and it's a really interesting conversation I think we're gonna have today. And glad that you're here to share your insights on this. We're gonna talk quite a bit about your experiences in our profession, and some things that are meaningful to you and within your firm, within our communities, collaborative type conversations, and I can't wait to get started. And for those listeners or viewers who've tuned into this podcast before, I just want to let you know that we're here after hours, and Melvin and Gary, thanks so much for joining us after, I know, long day at the office, but first guest so far on Bar Talk to take us up on maybe having an adult beverage as part of the show. So fantastic. Real quick, want to share for those viewers and listeners, we are still, of course, in hopefully the middle, maybe the end of this COVID-19 life experience, and trying to manage through a lot of different things, and it's why we're talking remotely. We'd love to have you guys right here at the bar and having this conversation here. But as we have done over the last couple of months and couple of shows, we did want to ask both of you, and maybe Gary start first, share what have your experiences been here living through this time, and maybe where are we right now, big picture, so listeners can kind of locate where we are in terms of pandemic. Some thoughts?
Yeah, so honestly, I think we're probably in the same situation everyone is, Andrew. I know KPMG, went home in around March, I want to say, and kind of been home since, just figuring out something that works, essentially, like everyone is. I know for me, at least, when I started working from home, I like the working from home for sure. It created some challenges. You got to figure out like a schedule that works for you, figuring out when to get online. I think it makes it a little bit hard to communicate with your team at times and stuff like that. But after you work all those kinks out, the working from home definitely has its benefits. Outside of that, I'd say the pandemic update, Andrew, we're kind of, like I mentioned, just getting through it like everyone is. I know for me, it's been a lot of staying at home, probably like everyone. I got a puppy back in March when you're staying at home and bored a lot. Got a beautiful, beautiful German Shepherd puppy that's 17 weeks old now. So outside of that, it's just been a lot of working from home, family coming over on the weekends and stuff to try to stay busy. But I'm definitely looking forward to getting back into the office and things starting to kind of open back up and getting back to normal.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. And guilty as charged too. The Grove family here in St. Louis adopted a puppy as well, and that's been a challenge too.
For sure.
Melvin, what are you seeing? And I know you're a dad and a parent too. What are you seeing? With your experience and maybe some things at your firm during this time, and maybe where are we heading also?
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, I'm working at EY, and so EY has done some pretty nice things in terms of having some flexibility around scheduling, and also for parents, they did a really nice thing with offering like leave. They did it during the summer and then during the fall, and I actually took them up on the fall offer. And so I've been off for a few weeks and I'll go back in a few weeks. So that was really nice because as we rolled into the school year and virtual learning, having all those Zoom meetings with work and then having to manage the Zoom meetings with my kids has been quite challenging. So I was happy to take that opportunity to kind of focus on virtual learning and building a plan and formulating a schedule so that, I would be able to kind of come back and hit the ground running. And then as far as where I think we're headed, EY has said we're not going back into the office until at least after the end of this year. So, it's hard to say when folks are going to start coming back, but I would suspect that people will start trickling back in maybe after the winter, so into the spring, and then hopefully we'll be back in full force by sometime in the summer, I would hope, but that's just speculation.
Yeah, and thanks, Melvin. I know we're hearing, and maybe you guys can share real quick before we head out. You're both in the auditing space, right? Maybe what have you seen different or maybe new that during this period of time with some of your clients or even some of your teams, your auditing teams, coworkers, with heading back into this fall? Are you starting to see your clients pick up audits that may have been postponed a little bit, some new standards to look at? Where are we right now in the auditing space, right, with the pandemic?
That's a great question. I can take that one first. So yes, I mean, it's definitely impacted audits. There's been some clients that have been pretty impacted by this COVID situation. And so I've noticed like slower response times in terms of getting us documentation and things like that. A lot of the companies are not allowing people to come on site. And so that's important, when you're talking about doing things like inventory observations and things. I actually had to do a virtual inventory observation. That was interesting. And I know like the AICPA and some other organizations like put out some guidance around how to do that properly. But yeah, we're just kind of rolling with it. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of impact there.
Did you have to use a drone to do some inventory auditing or what technology did you use for that?
So we were mostly doing it via Microsoft Teams. And then some of it was alternative procedures. So typically you would actually observe inventory being counted. But with some of the locations, I mean, they were very low staffed. And so, it was like, hey, can we, have someone walk us through virtually with their phone or with their computer? And it just wasn't able to happen. And so we were getting pictures and, basically having to back into numbers in order to audit them. It was quite interesting. But yeah, I would say the drone thing. I'm sure some other firms have done that, and probably even other clients, but not any that I was on.
No, Andrew, and I guess the one thing I'd add to that, Andrew, is I know me, I'm on I'm usually on financial services clients, so I don't deal with the inventory as much, but it's even been impacting the financial services clients, some of the kind of controls that you have in place, some of the kind of customer statements that go out on a monthly basis, daily basis, even some of the confirmations that you'd send from an audit perspective. It's like the issues with the mail, and it's definitely been creating some different considerations that you kind of have to go back to the risk assessment drawing board before you jump in there this busy season or this audit year.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and you know, I know that's and I know we've already kind of gone over our time for this, but these are some curious things that I think, you know, a lot of folks are, you know, maybe a little interested in hearing where things are, and especially from your perspective, some of the things your challenges maybe you've been dealing with just from your professional, you know, workspace. But I did want to kind of dive into the big topics, the what are we talking about today, gentlemen? And I think I'd like to ask you both maybe to share a little bit about the intersection of, maybe walk us through your kind of personal career thus far for a couple of minutes, and then share a little bit about, you know, kind of, you know, how has that been, from with your lenses, through your perspective, your personal experiences in our profession from maybe college to where you are today. And Gary, why don't you take, share a little bit about, maybe some experiences in college that you had that are meaningful here, and then, some you guys are both young professionals already, but maybe the early years at your firm, and then where you are right now.
No, yeah. So I know for me, Andrew, we're kind of talking about diversity today. And so for me, I'll start it a little bit further back. Like I mentioned earlier, so I went to Lincoln Middle School, and which is an inner city, kind of predominantly Black school, I would say. And then going to Blue Springs South, that was probably the first transition I had to kind of some of the cultural differences, since we're talking about diversity today. And then even further than that, going to Truman State, I was able to join Beta Theta Pi, which one of the best decisions I made, go Beta Theta Pi. But that even kind of let me get more insight to some of the kind of cultural differences. And the reason I say that is, like, when I'm looking at our profession, starting at college, when you're looking in some of the interview processes and kind of starting down that whole path, I think for me, at least, it was really quick to see that there was like a lack of diversity within kind of corporate America and within the space. And that's not just at any employer. With me, at least, I interviewed with some private industry firms, did some internships with private industry firms, did internships, obviously, with public accounting, Big Four firms. And everywhere I've seen, it's like you could see the same theme, that there was kind of that lack of diversity, I guess. But one of the things that I know, at least me, that helped me was, one, Beta, kind of having people around me that knew more about professional culture, I'd say, kind of how the corporate America workplace worked. So like having people around me that kind of knew about that. And then also, I was the president of the NABA chapter in college. But honestly, just joining the NABA chapter is another one of the things that helped me, because it's kind of like having those people around you that, one, you have kind of networking, mentoring with, and then in addition to Beta's kind of telling me, hey, this is the professional culture, this is the normal track. I also had some people around me that were more in line with my experiences as well in college, and they kind of gave me advice as well. So I know for me, at least, one of the things that brought me here is kind of those experiences, and I know how much it helped me in college, wanting to kind of spread that awareness now and today in the Kansas City Professional NABA chapter. So I know I jumped a little bit back there, but since we're talking about diversity today, I figured I know that's one of the things for me, is that the diversity and the kind of shocking differences in the cultures, I started to learn a little bit earlier than I know some people did, at least. And it was still even difficult for me. So knowing how difficult it was for me to transition from college to kind of some of the workforces and internships, et cetera, I can imagine how difficult it'd be for some other people that might not have even had those kind of extra experiences like Beta, or kind of had those people around them that just knew more about the culture. So that would be my 2 cents, I guess, on my personal.
That's great. Thanks, Gary. And maybe to extend, and we'll talk. I do want to talk, quite extensively about your perspectives and on culture and in your experience now. maybe some things, that our profession should be paying more attention to, listening to those types of things. But real quick, you mentioned, these great kind of stair steps, along the way with different organizations. Were there people involved there, looking back on your career that either from a mentorship perspective or just from a, community perspective that maybe showed you or guided you, or even if you've been able to mentor some young professionals as well? Where are you with those at, kind of in your career?
First, I guess with people that mentored me, I say probably back in high school, ironically again, the person that strongly convinced me to join Beta, it was like, this is the right thing you got to do, convinced me to start applying for some of the internships at the right time. That person is 2 years older than me in college. I don't know if I'm going to name drop him here, but that person, he's probably one of the people that was the most influence on me as far as helping me navigate kind of some of this stuff. And then kind of on the opposite side of that, me having mentors underneath me, I know that's something that I've done since I've been in kind of this corporate world. I always, if someone, I feel like I'm connected with someone, or if someone wants my advice, I'm an open book. That's why I'm here, Andrew. I'm an open book. I talk too much anyway. So if anybody ever wants my advice or anything, I have a couple mentees under me. I know most companies obviously have some sort of mentoring program where they allow you to kind of sign up for a mentor. And I know at KPMG, at least, I have a couple of mentees underneath me that I kind of help give advice to and whatnot.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. Appreciate the candor, and I understand about maybe not name dropping on a podcast. I get it, but your friend, your mentor, I'm sure will get a kick out of that one. Melvin, what about you? What, kind of share a little bit about your history a little bit deeper than you kind of where you went to school and what you're doing now. What's your experience been like? Why our profession even? Why accounting? Why CPAs? Those types of things.
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely a lot to tackle there. But I guess first and foremost, I think the connection between Mo CPA and NABA was kind of what brought us here. And so I do want to mention Stan Parker, our chapter president. He made it a point to say, to call his name out. And he's actually a really good friend of mine.
We weren't going to get out of this conversation without calling Stan up. So, but thank you. Yes.
Yep. So Stan and I actually go pretty far back, all the way back to high school. I graduated in 2007 and Stan graduated in 2008 from Sumner Academy, which is a college prep school, and it's one of the top 100 schools in the country. And it's actually located in the inner city of Kansas City, Kansas, ironically, and it's one of the best schools in the country. So really proud to have graduated from Sumner. And so really how my career kind of, got to this point, why accounting and all of that. I was a basketball player. I was a all-state player in Kansas coming out of high school. Then I went to junior college for a couple of years and played basketball there, and then went on to Park University and finished my basketball career there. And I was an all-conference player. And so basketball was like a full-time job for me. And so my mother worked for the IRS for 20 years before passing away in 2008, shortly after I graduated from high school. And so my thought was, if I didn't make it to the pros, then I had accounting as a backup. It made sense to me. She kind of taught me some of the concepts because I was taking an accounting course in high school at the same time. She was doing some continuing education at the IRS. And so that's what kind of got me started. And then I started my career in industry. And so there's a lot of folks that kind of go from these smaller colleges like Park University into industry because the big firms and really even the regional firms don't recruit from smaller schools for whatever reason. And so once I got into industry, I realized the power of the CPA. And so, I went on a on a pursuit to, further my education, I went and got my MBA, started the CPA exam process, and then Becker partners with DeVries Keller Business School of Management to offer courses for college credit. So I actually went and got another master's degree from DeVries Keller Business School of Management. And once that happened, public accounting kind of opened up for me, and I was about 4.5 years into my career at that point.
That's awesome. Thanks, Melvin. And maybe, maybe just real briefly, has there been anybody, either a shout out here or, along the way who, you mentioned your mom and, is there anybody else who maybe has been an inspiration or helped you or maybe even are you mentoring some folks right now with your level of experience and kind of navigating our profession?
No, I'm not currently mentoring anyone, but I am open to that. As far as, people that have mentored me, I would say, mostly my basketball coaches, over the years. But I really would have to give a lot of credit to, the coach that coached me, during like AAU. He saw that, I was talented and really I was kind of an at-risk youth, and was very fortunate to get accepted into Sumner Academy because I was getting in a lot of trouble. But a lot of it was just because I was, bored in class. And so basketball gave me something to, to really work toward, and it made me care about, school more. And I'm super thankful for my coaches that I've had. And then some of the networking, I've, again, known Stan.E.Parker, our chapter president at NABA since high school, and since high school. And so he's been at EY for about 4 years now. And so, he kind of saw the progress that I was making through my career, and a position opened up and he referred me. And so I'm super thankful. Stan's a great leader. Great leader. And so, he hasn't mentored me directly, but I definitely have taken a lot from him. And so at this stage, I think I am ready to kind of step into a mentor role. And I think you should probably have a mentor and also mentor other folks as well.
I think that's great. So anybody listening at the end of this podcast, maybe reach out to Melvin and have an awesome conversation, and Gary too, have an awesome conversation about, some things that we talk about here today and explore, great leaders right here. So let's talk. And this is really, I think, the crux of this conversation this evening. And that's diversity in our profession. And, I would like to do a whole lot of listening here for the next 15, 20 minutes. Can you share a little bit about moving from the personal conversations you've just shared with our audience here and our members to our profession in a broader level? How do you view diversity in our profession? What are some of the things that you are seeing and talking about, some of the issues, some of the challenges and the opportunities that our profession can better engage in, should be paying attention to, things that are top of mind for you? And Melvin, why don't you go ahead and start the conversation out, and you guys have great back and forth. I'm going to do a lot of listening here, so I wanted to ask that question and kind of let you guys go.
Well, I mean, looking at the profession in a broad sense, I mean, it's tough to get numbers on how we're doing as a profession in terms of diversity when you broaden, the scope. But I do know that in the United States, when it comes to CPAs, the percentage of CPAs out of I think it's somewhere between 300 and 400,000 CPAs in the U.S., and there's somewhere around 1 to 3% of the CPA profession is made up of Black professionals. And so there's a big gap there. And I would say that that is probably driving a lot of the diversity issues in the profession in terms of public accounting. because Gary and I talked about this a couple of days ago, but public accounting, whether it's the Big Four, whether it's a regional firm, it's kind of the gateway into, higher level, skilled accounting positions. And so if you get on a job board, because particularly early in my career, I would get on job boards, and this was before I had my CPA. And I think I may have even had an MBA at that time, but I didn't have my CPA yet. And you get on a job board and public accounting experience required. It might say 2 years, Big Four, 3 years, Big Four. And so when you start seeing stuff like that, I think part of, and I understand why, because, in public accounting, you get a lot of experience. A lot of these companies kind of have a lot of compliance and regulatory related things that drive their business. And so I get it. I don't think it's necessarily intentional from that perspective, but the way that public accounting is kind of that gateway, I think drives a lot of the diversity issues. When I was in industry, just kind of hit on another point. When I was in industry, like funding or helping to get the CPA was not really a motivation for companies, because you don't need a CPA really in industry. And so there are, I would say a higher percentage of Black professionals outside of public accounting, probably a lot higher than 1% and 3%, like I quoted for CPAs. But again, when they aren't required to get the CPA, then the companies aren't going to necessarily, push them in that direction. So I don't know if that fully answered your question, but that's definitely a factor.
No, yeah, I'll throw in some there too, Melvin, since we're probably going to keep chatting here. But honestly, Melvin, my first response to what you were saying is I think, like you was mentioning, kind of the finances is partly what goes into kind of those CPA numbers. It costs a lot of money to take the CPA, man. And then also on top of that, just between the finances and honestly just not knowing how valuable it is. Like for me, at least, people will tell you like CPA is gold. It's like having a gold bar in your pocket all the time. And it's like, if more people knew that, I think you'd see more people seeking it. But CPA is honestly just like this hidden profession. It's like an easy path to $1 million if you work hard and you retire. But it's like, it's just it's a hidden fact. So it's like, as far as what we're seeing in the profession, Andrew, I would say my first response is more so diversity has been around for a little bit. Honestly, it's probably what I'd say. I think back when I was interviewing and all of that, diversity was really big. It's like you go to every company and it's like, oh, we're top 100 diversity, we're top 100 this. And I think a couple years ago, 5 years ago or so, it was way more focused on diversity in women and diversity in other fashions. I think right now there is more of a little bit of a focus on like diversity in minorities, especially with like the Black Lives Matter movement and everything going. So I know for me, that's my first reaction is I would say diversity's probably been there, but over the last 5 years, I feel like 5 years ago, Black diversity wasn't really within that. And now I feel like it is a little bit much more of a focus at least. So that would be my first reaction. I know the reason also why I say it's more of a focus is all of the firms that I've seen have been doing all kinds of different stuff. They've been doing water coolers, different sorts of like technical topics to make sure people are informed about unconscious bias, stuff like that. Different sorts of, KPMG just elected a new national leadership team and multiple people on it are diverse. I don't know if that would have happened 5-10 years ago. So just stuff like that, I think it's more of an attention on the importance of diversity and the importance of all different types of diversity, like not just one diversity, any sort of underrepresented diversity. It's like you got to have a mix of people or else you just have too many of the same opinions. So it's like, I would say that's my first reaction is that I think it's more of a transition now into kind of more of a focus on minorities and whatnot and increasing diversity in that way.
Gary, you mentioned, maybe the ecosystem, the level of awareness, the things that our profession and maybe even society that we're looking at. from several years ago. What do you see? What do you see right now that maybe is different from 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago on that front? And maybe from your own, personal perspectives, are there things that you feel or see are changing right now?
I'll chime in here quick and let Melvin go. But like I said, some of the things, water coolers, some of the things like having people join to discuss a topic that's solely about Black diversity or the Black experience in corporate America. I don't know if that would have happened 5 years ago. I know that EY, there's been all the firms have been donating to kind of some historically Black colleges. I know KPMG, they're doing this new book club where they're sending out books and allowing people to read. Some of the books are strictly focused on diversity and stuff like that. And you kind of meet up once a month and read a certain chapter, stuff like that. I don't know if that would have happened 5 years ago. I think a lot of the firms are focusing on strictly making sure they interview at historically Black colleges, HBCUs. So I don't know if any of that would have happened 5 years ago. And I think when I came at least 5 years ago, it was way more of a focus on women diversity and women leadership. But we are starting to see that focus on minority diversity and specifically leadership positions. And that would be probably one of the biggest changes to me, is just active plans of active things happening. Obviously, there's still more that needs to happen, but active things happening that show that at least there's an intention on it that wasn't there 5 years ago, I would say, at least from my experience.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I would say, there was a lot of social kind of outrage associated with some of the recent like police related brutality and killings of Black people in the country. So we all know there was a lot of protests, and it was around that time where my firm really kind of got out in front of that. I thought that leadership, particularly at the highest levels, really we had an entire U.S. meeting where one of our top leaders, spoke out against systemic racism and police brutality, and it was very sincere. And I felt it. I can tell that she really meant it. And so I would say from that standpoint, the firms have done a good job. And I've seen other companies outside of public accounting do this too. But yeah, there's definitely been a shift. There's been a change. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I'm cautiously optimistic, to use the words of Dr. Fauci. And it's really just more so to say, I haven't seen the progress as far as over the years in terms of there being an increase in the diversity, substantially. I think we've been stuck around 1 to 3% of CPAs for quite a while now. And so it's a great opportunity for us to keep the ball rolling. And so I'm super excited about that. Even being on most CPA podcasts, it's just an example of the progress. So, yeah, super excited, but I really want to, get, kind of put some action behind, everything that's going on. And so I'm looking forward to kind of talking about that. And I will also mention one thing. I think the Big Four is really doing a good job when it comes to diversity. And I think some of that is just from a macro level. Like the Big Four probably get a higher percentage of Black professionals versus regional firms. It's from a CPA perspective, but I would say the regional firms, I haven't heard that they're doing quite as well, I would say, in terms of kind of getting out in front of that. So definitely like to see it be a little more well-rounded. But again, there's a lot of opportunity and optimism there.
Yeah, thank you both for some candid conversation on that front, and we do appreciate Team Most CPA appreciates you guys coming and talking about this. We're seeing and hearing a lot of some similar sentiments coming from a variety of different member firms, businesses, and individual members. So cautiously optimistic, I think, is a great way to put things. And this is a good segue. And I think you both teased it a little bit. I'd like to ask you both candidly again, what if we were here sitting at the bar and talking about this, what should I do? What can we do? What should our profession be doing, even moving forward? And from your standpoint, that you think really can make a difference to move it from maybe cautiously optimistic to we're making some real progress here. Gentlemen, what do you think? And maybe Melvin, go right ahead.
So Gary mentioned that there's been some kind of movement around bringing some awareness around like unconscious bias, because I think that that's probably one of the areas that is probably critical to kind of addressing some of the core issues, because I feel like when I go into a firm, there's often really not any Black professionals in the leadership positions. And I think a lot of that has to do with kind of the culture that I don't think it's actually intentional, but I think it's more so that unconscious aspect of, if everyone has bias, I have bias, everyone has bias, and it comes from how we were raised, our backgrounds, our socioeconomic status, our experiences, etc. And so in order for there to be some real progress in terms of creating a culture that is inclusive, that is very open to folks from different cultures, there really has to be an effort around really going after that unconscious bias. And then I would say I talked about how from the recruiting aspect, how a lot of firms don't really recruit from smaller schools, but like Gary mentioned, if when it comes to going into the gateway, public accounting, that's the gateway into pretty much into the profession. How do we get more diversity in these larger schools that the public accounting firms recruit from? So I think there has to be some awareness and some efforts there in terms of resource allocation, et cetera. And then you also, I think it might be a good idea to start, recruiting from smaller schools. Even though you're not going to probably get as many as as many professionals as you would from a larger school, of course you're not, but there's still a lot of quality candidates. I mean, I went to Park University, and that's just one school, but Park was very diverse. I'm African American, but I'm grown up here in Kansas City, Kansas. And when I was at Park, I mean, just in my class, there were several Black professionals from different countries even. And so, and there's a lot of perspective that you're going to get from there, and a lot of value from the diversity that you're going to get from there. And so I do think broadening that net in terms of where the companies recruit from is going to really help.
My 2 cents to add to that, Andrew, honestly, when you're saying what should you do or what should anybody do, honestly, my first response would be to use your platform. Use whatever platform you have to try to educate people. And I think that's something that you're doing right now. Obviously, you're allowing us to be here and kind of spread awareness, hopefully raise NABA membership. So that would be my first response, is using your platform to whatever platform you have, whatever position that means, to kind of spread awareness and educate on the importance of diversity, on unconscious bias, on whatever. And then secondly, before you even kind of answer what you should be doing, to me, it's kind of understanding what some of those challenges are. And two of the biggest challenge, obviously the biggest challenge is the pipeline. It's like the biggest challenge, excuse, whatever you want to call it. The biggest thing that I hear is the pipeline. There's just not enough kids. And kind of like Melvin said, there's different ways you got to go about it. You got to go to some of the smaller schools to get kids. You got to do different things. But to me, another thing that you got to do is you got to try to continue to change the culture of like corporate America. I think you got to try to find a way to like redefine the culture and make it more accepting of everyone. And once you do that, I think you'd have more people interested in accounting. Right now, everybody knows accounting has this bad rap that it's like boring. It's just John Doe at a desk with a calculator and some khakis and a button down, and he's there 9 to 5. He clocks out for his lunch right now. That's like the rap accounting has. And it's like, if more people knew what it really was, and I think it wouldn't have that bad of a rap. And on top of that, if it just continues to have a better culture and be more accepting, I think you'd see more minorities, more diversity in the profession as a result. But I don't think you just snap your fingers and use your platform to make things better. There has to be like some sort of true change of culture that like makes it more inviting, honestly. Me, I'm weird. I like accounting. So Melvin's weird. He likes accounting, but there ain't enough weird people, basically. It needs to be more inviting to where, honestly, with me, another thing, Andrew, is kind of recruiting, being on the other side now and going to colleges and recruiting and stuff. What I see when I look at a lot of the Black candidates or minority candidates is that they really don't understand corporate culture as much as they just aren't a good candidate, if that makes sense. So when you say there's a lack of candidates, there's plenty of candidates with like a 3.9, 3.8, whatever you need, but those candidates might not understand corporate culture as much. And I know it's kind of what I was hitting on for me with the beta and how they helped me with some of that. With me, I'm good at school. That's easy. It's like, you know the rules of school. You go to class, you sit down, you take the test, you leave. But you can get a 3.9 at school, and someone that understands corporate culture a little bit better, they get a 3.9 at school. Up until that point, y'all been on the same page. Y'all have had the same challenges. You got to go to school. You got to get good grades. But then the second y'all step into kind of a corporate environment, people at least that come from backgrounds like me and Melvin, it makes it a little bit harder to have the knowledge that you need to understand sort of kind of some of the corporate etiquette, some of the things that you just don't do. So it's like, what I mean by that is it's easy to understand the rules of like an accounting class and what accounting is. It's a lot harder to understand the rules of like the corporate world. And I think that like a lot of people that at least grew up in my neighborhood, it's like, that's not what I'm getting taught growing up. Some of the stuff that's at least in the corporate world and some of the stuff that I've learned now that you need to know, and that I have mentees that I kind of pass that down to. To me, that's one of the biggest things is just those rules and not knowing, that lack of information. It's like you're going in without a head start, even if it's something small. And I can't even think of an example off the top of my head, but even whether it's language, whether it's you saying A, whether it's you saying anything, it's just like, there's different things that's like, it operates differently. And if you don't understand that and you don't have that knowledge, you're already at a disadvantage. So it's like, that's kind of what I mean by like redefining that professionalism and kind of trying to change the culture of like what's acceptable and what's not. Because if we're here to do accounting, then let's do it. I think you'd find more people, but I think the corporate world has a lot of other kinks in it that you have to learn. And for me, luckily, I was fortunate enough to learn that through moving to Blue Springs for those last 4 years, through joining Beta. Whether it's like even, this is a random story, Andrew, but growing up, the guy that I'm gonna show him this podcast after, the guy that I was telling you was my mentor that's 2 years older than me, he'd always give me crap for saying McDonald's in the nicest way. I say McDonald's instead of McDonald's. And back when I was younger, and just little things like that. It sounds small, but it has an impact on like first impressions and how articulate you sound. And if you go in there and you don't have those little corrections or just whatever it is, that's like those little extras. If you don't have that, but you know the crap out of accounting, you're still at a disadvantage. So it's like, to me, understanding those challenges and try to find a way to fix it, fix the culture, fix like redefining what professionalism is to you and your company. trying to find a way to like fix that, I think you inherently kind of fix the diversity numbers afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen. And you know, I've been taking a whole lot of notes, listening. I really appreciate your insight. I've got one half funny, you know, that as CPAs in our profession, often would love, there's no checklist for this type of conversation about how to do this stuff right. And you might be surprised, you know, as an advocacy organization, we've been in conversations where maybe we should, as a profession, develop a checklist for this, right? That's what we love to do. So one quick follow-up question: where do you see the kind of the exposure, the business exposure happening, or where would you like to see it happen? Would you like to see this start happening at the high school level? Are our outreach efforts for visibility for our profession, for minority talent, where do they need to go?
If I could speak on that real quick, I took an accounting class as a sophomore in high school. And I thought that was probably, I mean, I guess I would say, I think that that's probably what stuck. You know, I would look and see that maybe some of the other kids they didn't like it as much. But it wasn't like it was the best accounting course ever. I mean, it was a basic accounting course. We learned, you know, some basic skills, kind of debits and credits, some T accounts. And that was pretty much it. But it kind of stuck in my head as, you know, a potential opportunity. And then when I went to college, you know, you kind of have to figure out what major you're going to major in when you go to college. And long story short, you look up and you say, well, what's the most stable career that, you know, you can have, or what's the kind of the best and most stable career for a family, for instance. And accounting is like one of the top 5 or top 10, you know, fields. And so definitely, I would say probably in my view, probably around that sophomore year, because when you start transitioning from like sophomore to junior is right around the time where college starts to become more of a thought process. And so I think if you did it too early, then they might kind of forget about it. But going into your junior year from your sophomore year, you're thinking ACT, SAT, college, what am I going to major in? And so I think that's probably where it should start.
No, yeah, honestly, I would say the exact same thing, Andrew. The only thing I'd add is like, I'd say it's twofold. I'd say you need strong participation day one from like your leadership, the highest leadership, and super young at like, it's high school young, as Melvin was talking. And the reason I say that is because you can go to high schoolers today, but unless you have a more enticing culture, like I was saying, I don't think it's going to be that impactful. I don't think it's going to be that effective. So it's like, I think if you could somehow simultaneously go to those high schoolers or go to that youth and show that your culture is different through whatever way, or show that your culture is a certain way, I think that'd be a lot more effective. But I don't think that going just to the youth is the exact answer if the culture is still what it is, because the youth have to see something that makes them realize that the culture is different. I know with me at least, Andrew, interviewing, and like I said, I interviewed with multiple firms. I was fortunate enough to be blessed in that sense. But at dang near every firm I interviewed at, interview person 1, interview person 2, interview person 3, they're all of the same culture. They're all of the same way. And to me, from the second you see a name on a piece of paper, whether it's KPMG, whether it's EY, PwC, Deloitte, from the second you see a name on a piece of paper and you start to put faces with that name, you start to build your culture. So even if you feel like your culture is one thing, if someone's interviewing with you and they see person 1, 2, 3, their idea of your culture may be something different. So that's kind of what I mean when I say, if you're going to go to a high schooler, you need to make sure what you're doing is going to show them that culture that's like enticing.
Agreed. And I would also say, yeah, if you go into, like, as a candidate, if you go into a firm and there's no like diverse partners in the firm, that's a little scary for candidates, because they can't see that. It's difficult for them to see that this is where I could be one day, whether it's a partner or whether it's a senior manager or whatever the case. I think it's important to have representation, so that, candidates have, something to work toward, and you can kind of display the, hey, like, you could actually, make it to the top here.
I was telling our office managing partner that exact same thing a couple weeks ago, word for word, that importance of having specifically diversity in part, like up highest levels of management. Because for me, Andrew, I'm one of the most confident people you'll meet. I'm super confident, especially in like an intellectual standpoint. And even for me, when I look at the partners at a lot of firms, it does make you wonder, like, can I do it? And I think I can, but it makes you wonder, can I? And that can I is really hard to deal with for the 15, 20 years that you got to do to get there. So it's like, I do think he was surprised to hear how much, even from my standpoint, I felt like it had a big impact on like me feeling like it was a true goal. Cause they're like, Gary, you're doing good. You just keep working hard, keep doing good. You're good. But for me, I'm like, but am I? It's hard to see. It truly does have an impact. It's hard to see, like, am I just going to be the first person to break through? Like, it does have an impact on your mental as far as like, and I say that not only to you, Andrew, but to any company that's listening to this. Any diverse candidate you hire, to me, my opinion would be that does have an impact, whether they say it or not. It does have an impact on like their belief if they can actually do it, like truly do it, and how hard that is to do. I think the amount of diversity in your management will impact their opinions on how easy they think it is to kind of get there or not.
Maybe even riffing off of that, where to go to find that community, the group of like-minded professionals, shared experiences. It's a big deal. It's a big deal in our profession, and I do want to ask you, and we've had several conversations, the three of us and other folks, about your involvement with our friends in NABA, National Association of Black Accountants. Can you share a little bit about maybe your community there and the organization, what you all are doing right here at home in Kansas City on that front?
Yes, NABA-KC kicked off, what was it, Gary, back in, was it June or July?
April, June, something.
Okay, there we go. I was a little off there, but yeah, it was an effort. It was a team effort, led by Gary and Stan.E.Parker, and I think a lot of the reason why we kind of came together and really wanted to get NABA started, was to have that shared experience, to kind of have that networking amongst other minority professionals, and just been really happy to get the ball rolling there. I mean, there's excellent opportunity, pretty much, and I know Gary will probably speak on this a little bit more, but I think that one of the things that we're really kind of targeting is the youth, colleges, kind of increasing our membership and increasing our our presence in this market to lift as we climb is one of the it's the slogan, or the key phrase of NABA, and that really does kind of speak to what we're trying to do. I mean, obviously, a lot of us in NABA have, we're 5-10 years into our careers, and so we're like, man, if I had known this when I started, and so kind of giving back, and that's kind of one of the big things. And then just like you said, Andrew, shared experience does help. And then, gosh, I don't know where else to go with that, but yeah, just really happy to be a part of NABA and pushing, our mission forward.
100%. No, Andrew, so I'll nerd out on NABA for like 30 seconds here. One, join NABA. Whoever's listening to this podcast, join NABA. You're more than welcome. I guess my first sentence on that would be I always tell people, Andrew, I know NABA, the name sounds very exclusive. I always tell people NABA's open to anybody who's passionate about like increasing diversity in corporate America. Like if you agree with any of the things I said so far about unconscious bias, about like if you feel for me with some of the kind of the experiences that I said I'm going through, um, join NABA, kind of help the mission, help the cause. That's my 30-second spill on NABA in the sense that NABA is awesome. But honestly, the shared experiences, like it, for me at least, I done told Melvin this, I done told Stan, everybody. From the night I met all those guys, it does make it's such a warm, like networking type feeling. Solely from that, like, Andrew, I'm not sure if we've even talked about this much yet, but on the kind of code switching aspect, feeling like when you're an intern especially, I wouldn't even say I have to do it as much now because I'm a lot more confident in myself now and where I'm at. But when you're interviewing and stuff, there is definitely this feeling, and I'll let Melvin throw his thoughts on it, but there's definitely this feeling that you have to speak a certain way or you have to put on like a certain voice. And I'll let kind of Melvin throw his thoughts on that. But to me, when you get around NABA, it was the first time in a while that I completely felt like I didn't have to. 100% felt like I didn't have to. And even the things I love about my job is there's times I get close to 100%. My main team is basically 100% as far as feeling as comfortable as I can feel in a corporate environment. But I think being around NABA, the second at a professional level, it gave me the same feelings I did in college in the sense that it's like, these people understand that came from, Melvin played, like, what are you saying about basketball? Basketball was my life growing up. It's like, and I know it's not like that for some people. So for some people, basketball is like, why is it so important to you? And it's like, basketball is life. It's like, but just people that have those shared experiences, but also are ready to get down and learn accounting and ready to make sure you're still by the book. It does make you so much more relaxed. Kind of that like code switching thing I was saying, not feeling like that from the first time I meet Melvin, if I don't kind of articulate myself, everybody knows how big first impressions are. If I don't kind of articulate myself a certain way, feeling like Melvin's going to have like an opinion of me, like knowing that just didn't exist at all is so like relieving. And I think that's what NABA offered me from like a networking type mental health standpoint. I'll let kind of Melvin throw his thoughts in on the code switching in that sense. But I know for me, that was one of the biggest things is just like that comfort, like home food cooking type feeling when you're around some NABA people at times. It's like, it's just natural. It's a good time. And I think even at the kickoff meeting that we had at KPMG's office, I think everybody felt like that. That isn't just me. My team, I had my team go to that, Andrew, that event. I believe you were there. I had my team go to that and they loved it. They were like, that we left, they were like, that was awesome. Like, when's the next one? And it's because of that true home cooked meal type feeling. It's like, it's natural, it's real. And it's like, to me, that is one of the best things that NABA offers.
If you or anybody you know is interested in joining NABA, please follow the instructions on the screen and visit the link below this video to sign up today.
Yeah, I mean, coming from Black culture, I mean, there's no way to really sugarcoat it. The reality is, being Black is a certain type of culture. And so that when he talks about the shared experience, like I got a chance to go to the NABA student conference that was in St. Louis a couple of years ago. And that was my first experience like at a real NABA event. And I mean, I don't like the home cooking that Gary mentioned. I could liken it to like a family reunion. That's how it almost felt. But we're all accountants. There were a lot of students there. I think there were probably 200, 300 students there. So definitely, quick plug. I mean, firms definitely need to have a presence at the NABA student conferences in their region. I think that's critical. The regional firm that I was at that time did not have a presence at the NABA student conference, and it was just mainly the Big Four and I think a couple of industry companies. So that's probably something that I think more companies need to look out for if they're looking to increase diversity. But again, it was like a family reunion. I mean, I felt totally in my element. I felt totally um, like a part of, what was going on there. And I think that I'd like to, and I've worked at companies even where it was like mostly like African American and minorities, working in there, and the vibe was similar. And you don't have to code switch. So I don't know if Gary, did you kind of define what code switching was for the group?
No, I'll let you take it. Brief.
Well, yeah. So code switching is basically when you're not speaking your native language. So and a lot of times, at least in the Black culture, particularly where I'm from, now there's different dialects, in terms of where you're from in a regional perspective, but I speak differently at home than I do at work. And this was a thing even growing up. My mom worked for the IRS. I mentioned that earlier, and it was the same way. She would tell me to hold on, if she was calling into work, and her voice sounded completely different. And it was like, Mom, what are you doing? But the reality is there's a deep issue there in terms of not, the way that we speak is just, not accepted in the corporate world. And I actually went into the lengths of actually buying a book. I bought a book. It was like Merriam-Webster's How to Speak English Properly. And the funniest thing was I found out that the way that we speak English in America is not actually the proper way to speak English. And there's a ton of phrases that we use regularly that are not grammatically correct. And so, but it's just socially accepted that this is how we talk in, business, corporate environment. But the challenge is, I think we do need to, again, the unconscious bias, with diversity and inclusion, kind of understand that, folks come from different backgrounds and cultures. You judge someone based on their skill set. You got to have a different metric other than just, the way that people talk. And then people will feel more comfortable and at home, and they can perform better for your companies. So I think that's critical.
The culture. And even if my perception or what I'm describing isn't truly the culture, then that needs to be evident, so other people don't have this misperception. But for me, I know my team, they were super supportive. The team I'm still on now, I told them, I was like, hey, I don't know how much longer I can do this. It's like, in the sense that it's like, it is a lot of mental stress. You're also not trying to just do accounting and make sure my ASCs are on point. Because like I said, I always want to be the best, Andrew. I'm definitely competitive in that sense, but not only making sure your ASCs and accounting are on point, you also have to be worried about how you're coming off. And that puts a lot of mental stress on it. And for me, when I sat down and told my manager about that, it was just like, she's like, I do not want you to feel like that, like at all. And they like go out of their way to make sure I feel like welcome and stuff like that. So it's like, it is important. And I know for me, it even makes me, like Melvin said, my efficiency is higher. I'm happier. I'm willing to do more for you. And I always kind of take that approach when I'm in a leading position. Is like, you're never going to get people to work unless you like motivate them. So it's like, if you make me happy and I feel like you're there for me and you're on my side, it's like, I'm going to be more willing to work for you. I'm going to be, if I feel like I don't have to worry about that extra, if I accidentally let McDonald's slip out, Andrew, I'm not going to get judged. If I don't say McDonald's instead of McDonald's, I'm not going to get judged. Like, that's a bad example, obviously not that. But if you don't have those extra kind of thoughts in your head, you just work smoother. And I know for me, like I said, I mentioned that to my team, and I've been blessed enough now to not have to do it as much, at least. The whole code switching and kind of the perception thing that I was talking about. I know Melvin knows, we were talking about it the last couple of weeks. I had dreads in high school. My fiance is standing over here behind me. We've been dating since we were 16 years old. She dated dreads Gary, OG Gary, I'm gonna call it. But
Hi, Gary's fiance, by the way.
But she, just that concept of like, when I graduated high school, I was like, oh, if I'm getting an accounting major, I got to get a haircut. This is the longest my hair's been since I graduated from college 4 years ago. when my team saw me at this working from home, they were like, I love your hair. Oh my gosh. It's like, blah, blah. And I was like, it's just, I haven't cut it in like 3 weeks. Like, that's it. Usually I'm like on top of it. Like,
Stan and
but
I had dress too.
it's like going from college to high school, I had that perception, whether it's right or wrong. It didn't like anybody told me, but I had that perception that's like, oh, if I want an accounting job, got to cut my hair. And
Well,
you would
I'm
be amazed. The last thing I want to say about that is you would be amazed. I think she knows. And the reason I touched people at Beta the most, I'm not sure how much you know about Beta, but it's a predominantly Caucasian fraternity. And I learned things that I never would have learned in my life if I didn't join there. But I think the reason that I touched them the most is they were just like seeing me even over the 4 years, how much more articulate I got and how much differently I get treated from senior year of high school, 18 years old, still the nicest kid in the world. I've always been the same personality, but first impressions is what I mean. And that like how you talk, just how I get treated, whether that's by police officers, whether that's by corporate accountants, whether
Oh,
by anybody, the perception
man.
of like, if I don't talk a certain way, the perception of who Gary is such drastically different that it's not even worth taking the risk. That it's just when I meet someone, it's hi, I'm Gary Parker. It's not relaxed. So that perception I cannot downplay enough.
Code switching equals safety when you're black.
Yeah.
Because like you said, when you talk to a police officer, like say you were speeding, if you get pulled over and you are in just your regular element and you're not code switching, you're not as safe. like, but if a police officer rolls up and I'm like, hey, how's it going? I'm probably good, especially if I'm dressed,
Your work clothes, yeah.
But I'm always a CPA, regardless of whether I'm wearing a hoodie or not. But they can't tell, and so it's funny. Like code switching is literally a safety protocol and measure that we have to take sometimes in day-to-day life.
I mean, gentlemen, this is thank you so much for sharing, your perspectives and your experience and your thoughts and some great advice for myself. Like I said, I took a ton of notes. I did want to ask, if folks want to talk with you more about any of these conversations, and especially maybe how to get involved with NABA-KC or NABA in general, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of y'all?
So one, obviously, I would reach out to myself, Stan Parker. I'm not sure, Andrew, if during the actual podcast, if there's a way to put the email addresses across the screen or something, but garyparker@kpmg.com. I wish I knew Stan's email off the top of my head. He's going to give me crap when he sees this. But reaching out to either one of us, reaching out to membership@naba.com, nabakc.org, sorry. And just trying to be active. I know, honestly, the biggest thing is getting in contact, Andrew. Whether that's reaching out directly to me, I will respond, reaching out to just our membership email box, reaching out to nationals, reaching out to Melvin. If you reach out to any NABA member and they will get you in the right place as far as making sure you're signed up and ready to go. I know one of the things that I definitely wanted to kind of use this platform for is I wanted to spread awareness of like the NABA mission, and hopefully more people join NABA, whether that's public accounting, whether that's private accounting. And NABA, I wanted to make this clear that we have people in the membership that aren't even accounting majors, people that don't know crap about accounting. There's people that are IT that are just in that kind of corporate world. And it's, as long as you're in that bucket and you're willing to support diversity in corporate America, you're more than welcome to sign up. I'm motivated to put in the work, but I don't by the least claim to know all the ideas. So we need more people. The more ideas, the more people, the better. I think you're going to see more of an effective result if we get more brains in, more diverse brains, let's say.
Just wanted to thank you and the NABA-KC leadership team for allowing me to listen and hopefully offer a little bit of advice over the last several of months as well. And I did want to also say from our board of directors and our staff here, thank you for allowing us to listen and even have this partnership to have this conversation. We believe that coalitions and partnerships benefit us all. So thank you very much for all of that. And I did want to ask, we're about to close up here. Our Mrs. Producer is saying, hey, Andrew, it's about that time. And I get it. And by the way, I feel like we barely scratched the surface on some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to, again, take a moment out to say thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and your thoughts and your ideas.
Is
there anything that we've missed, guys? Anything big that we've missed that you want to kind of leave our viewers and listeners with?
I'll let Melvin go as well, but honestly, like I said, it definitely, like you mentioned, there's a lot that we didn't even touch because this is definitely it's more of a bar discussion. Like you said, it's just kind of a chill discussion as long as it's what needs to be had. But honestly, the piece that I leave people with, Andrew, is if you're a company and you're interested in improving your diversity, one, listen, I would say. Listen to some of the things that we've been saying here. And then secondly, kind of assess your company. If you're asking yourself why your company doesn't have diverse numbers or why your company doesn't have XYZ, assess your company and try to listen to some of the things that me and Melvin were saying today and take action, whether that's catching up to speed to some of the stuff that we were saying the Big Four's already doing, like water coolers and donating and trying to recruit from HBCUs, whether that's catching up to speed or if you are a Big Four, trying to do more. I just challenge companies to continue to kind of assess their diversity and assess where they're at. And I can never force people to do anything. If you don't believe that it's important, you don't. But the one thing that I hope I don't see is more companies saying we have a lack of a pipeline or we coming up with excuses for it, essentially, if I'm being blunt, Andrew. But that would be my closing remarks. It's just that assess your company essentially and try to take action in whatever way possible. That would be my closing remarks. And if you're a person and not a corporation, join NABA. That's my closing remarks. Gary Parker at KPMG.com. I'll let Melvin go.
Thank you guys for having me on the podcast. I don't know if I have much to add. I think Gary did a great job kind of closing it out. You can find me on LinkedIn. Melvin Gatson is my name. And just really happy to have been able to join the conversation and looking forward to working with MOCPA and NABA going forward.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And hey, it's been fun. You guys are always welcome to come on the show at a future date. And of course, give us a jingle. Again, raise a glass to you guys both. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and we will see everybody on the next episode.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching. Please comment below if there are topics you would like to see us cover, and make sure to subscribe.